Hey everyone, welcome back to RedTOOL Woodshop. In this video, we're going to continue building this simple end table. We'll shape the legs and aprons to give it a lighter look, and I'll walk you through every step. We'll taper the legs, add a gentle curve to each apron, and I even have a cool tool to show you that'll make this glue up come together seamlessly. Now this project sort of got off on the wrong foot. As I was disassembling this end table, I accidentally pinched my finger between the apron and the leg, and not even 5 minutes in, I needed a band-aid. With all that all patched up, I moved on to tapering the legs, and for that, I'm going to be using our Precision Taper Jig. To begin, I made a mark 5 inches down from the top of the leg using my saddle T-square. This mark is where I want the taper to begin. And I only marked it on the faces with the dowel holes because those are the two faces that will be tapering on each leg. My blade of choice for this step is one of our 30-tooth Ultra Shear glue line rip blades. Now this taper jig is super easy to set up, so let's go ahead and walk through that first. I went ahead and loosened each knob to adjust everything, and then set the two scales to 1.5 degrees. The interlocking teeth on these scales make it super easy to set whatever angle you'd like, all the way up to 15 degrees. Once those were dialed in, the last thing we have to tighten up is this long span clamp, and this just ensures that the jig stays locked in position right where you want it. Next, let's check out these clamping handles and clamping dogs. The quick release button allows for speedy removal, and these clamping dogs can be positioned in one of two ways. This first way allows you to clamp material ranging from 1.5 inches up to 3 inches. To clamp thinner material, simply remove the clamping handle, flip around the clamping dog, and reinstall it back on the stud. In this position, you'll be able to clamp material as thin as just over 1/2 inch. Now that we're clear on how everything operates, we can place the leg on the MDF sled, tight against the fence and the push plate, and then clamp it in position. To line up the cut, I have the right side of the jig tight against my table saw fence, and I'll just tap my fence over in position until the blade meets the line that we drew on our workpiece. Now take your time to make sure everything is positioned just how you like it, and then clamp the fence in place. When making this cut, I like to stand on the right side of the fence, and then I keep my hands positioned on the clamping handles. I'll maintain downward pressure against the table saw, also while keeping the jig tight against the fence as well. To make the second taper on the leg, I just have to unclamp everything and then rotate to the other face with the dowel holes, clamp it back in position, and we're ready to go. And here's a quick look at the leg right off the saw, and with that, all that's left to do is to do the exact same thing to the 3 remaining legs. I really do enjoy using this taper jig. It has served me really well over the last 3 years since it was first introduced into our product lineup. One of my favorite features has to be the interlocking teeth and the scales that you use to set the angle. It makes it really easy to recreate similar projects over and over again by having settings that are locked in and that can always be reverted back to time and time again. The taper jig that I'm using here today is our 32-inch version that can support up to a 32-inch leg. If your project calls for something longer than that, there's an optional extension kit that you can add on, and it'll increase the cut capacity up to 48 inches. If you'd like to learn more about this tool, or any of the other ones that you see me using here today, make sure to check out the description box below. With the tapers now cut on all 4 of our legs, it's time to set aside the taper jig and shift our focus to the aprons. To add a little more character to these legs, I'll be adding some curves using this handmade MDF template. There are specific dimensions for this template on our blog, which is also in the description box below. To help align the template to the apron, I set the top edge against my table saw fence and then use this 1-2-4 setup block to help with aligning the end. Then I'll add some double-sided tape and then press the template onto my workpiece. Next stop was the bandsaw to cut away the bulk of the waste before flush trimming at the router table. To make this process go a bit faster and avoid any possibility of cutting into my template, I use the Steady Curve Bandsaw Template Guide. The template guide sits just above the thickness of my material, and it's designed to run up against my MDF template. This tool really excels in speeding up template work, and it completely prevents any possibility of me accidentally cutting into my MDF template. Immediately after that, I jumped over to the router table and used this beautiful flush trim compression bit to bring the apron to its final shape, leaving a nice clean cut. And just like previous steps, once I got that done, I had to go back and do the 3 remaining aprons following the exact same process. After using the SteadyCurve on several projects, I've noticed that the SteadyCurve really helps to speed up this process. It allows me to make the cut much faster, and it's nice because immediately after that, I'm already set up and ready to flush trim everything at the router table. Once those were all cut to final size, the last step was to add an 1/8 inch roundover to the bottom edge of each apron, as well as all 4 edges and the feet on each leg. From there, the parts were pretty much ready for assembly. Before that though, I like to sand each piece all the way up to 180 grit. To assist with the glue up, I like to use these clamp bridges, and you'll see why here in a minute. I took my time to add glue to each joint and then just assembled each apron in its already predetermined location. If you missed the first video on this build, where we covered the layout and the dowel joinery using the Cameline dowel guide, make sure to go back and check that video out. Once the piece was fully put together, all that was left to do was to add clamps. Now the first 2 sides were easy to add clamps, but you can see here how that clamping bar, it gets in the way and prevents me from adding clamping pressure to the other 2 joints. And that's where these clamping bridges come in. Just like you'd expect from the name of them, they simply bridge the clamping bar and provide a nice flat space for you to add adequate clamping pressure to. This easy solution really does save me a lot of time, because without these, this little end table would have to be a 2-step glue up process, which would ultimately just take longer and prolong the finishing process. Well guys, that about wraps it up here for this video. But be on the lookout for one more video to this series where we'll cover making the top, shaping it, and installing it on the end table. I really hope you guys enjoyed this little mini series on this build. If you'd like to learn more about any of the tools that I used here today, make sure to check out the product links below. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them below and I'll be happy to respond. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll see you next time here on RedTOOL Woodshop.